So this is one of the biggest topics that is discussed by the sages in the wisdom texts. And it is because a big part of our existence is eating. So breathing and eating are biggest parts of who we are, and it shapes our character and our personality. So in yoga, they have a theory. They say, you are what you eat. What you eat is who you are. So if you want to know who you are, you just look at your dinner table and you look at your plate, you'll know exactly who you are. And if you want to know what quality of life you live, just watch how you breathe and you'll know the quality of life you live. So in Ayurveda, there is a tremendous emphasis of understanding the importance of your body in its relationship to nature, and also in relationship to the different seasons. And so in there is a special part of Ayurveda. It's called Charvaka. Uh, I think it's called Charvaka Upanishad, if I'm not correct, but is Charvaka is the sage. He writes about the importance of diets and the transfer of consciousness from external nature, and that becomes our internal being. It becomes our nature. When nature becomes our nature. So everyone in this world, we have different body types, different bodily constitutions. Just like Belgium has a constitution, the United States of America also has a constitution. These constitutions, they govern the functioning of the country. And it gives you the metric and the boundaries and the parameters. So similarly, our body is like a country of its own, and it has its own constitution. There's governed your body's rhythm, and happiness and success will be governed by a certain constitution. And the constitution of the body is in junction with the planets that governs this planet. So if you say, for example, there's three main constitution types in Ayurveda: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. I won't get into the details of each and every one of them because it's pretty complex. And then there's Vata, Pitta, and Vata, Kapha, and then there's like this constant mix of all three that creates different bodily constitutions. It would have to be a long series of classes to explain all the different body types and break it down, and also give you dietary recommendations for that. But since the question is food and its relationship to emotions, I want to try and focus on that for the next 20 minutes. So every food that we see in this world, every plant, every animal, everything that is conscious has an emotion. For example, when you eat a broccoli, broccoli has a certain emotion. When you eat, a hamburger, it has a certain emotion. Because at one point, a broccoli, your hamburger, they were conscious beings. Very rarely would you see human beings consume something that is not conscious or has not been conscious at one point in their time. So what eating does is literally relates to the emotions that we carry in our minds. Every food that you eat, there is three primary transactions that is happening between the food that you eat and how it's affecting you. The first level is that when you eat food, it has its waste. Whatever you eat, it'll turn into energy and the waste will come out from the other side of the factory. And the content, what remains, is how it spreads the physical energy throughout the body. Like, the enzymes will start spreading different energies throughout your whole body. That is the second level. And the third is what it does to your mind and your consciousness. So when a yogi picks a diet, it looks at everything from a conscious perspective. And some people may pick food based on just what it tastes like, because it tastes good, so I'm going to have it. So it's based on sensory contact gratification. And then there are people who just kid, they don't even care what it tastes like. They just eat because they just need to fill up some void space within their belly or within their minds. So it is extremely relevant for people who want to have a good mental health and a balance in their life to eat food that is conscious and that is connected closest to nature. Because the more we are closest connected to nature, the likelihood of you being healthiest and having the most well-balanced emotions is very high because you're close to your mother. Nature is your mother. And higher up you go in the consciousness chain, the higher transfer of emotions from what you eat into your being. Yeah, so what happens is, for example, you eat a broccoli. Broccoli is a direct product from the earth, right? Or a salad, or a lettuce, or fruits and other vegetables. So it has the highest connection to Mother Nature and is on the lower spectrum of conscious evolvement. And then you look at what do the four-legged animals eat. They eat grass. They will eat carrots like rabbits and cows. You'll feed them grains and wheats. So then it goes to the next level of consciousness. And you'll be able to see it because they move on their own and they have eyes, they have ears. So they have sensory faculties. That means there is awareness and consciousness in those living creatures. And they have emotions because they have consciousness. For example, Emily has a dog, and that dog is conscious. Emily will not eat that dog because the dog is conscious. It'll hurt her conscience. So therefore, yogis are always selective to see how closely they can stay connected to Mother Nature. I want to tell you a small story. This is a story in India, when they worship Kali, they sacrifice a lot of goats. They chop their heads off. With one chop, they chop their head off. And they whisper a mantra to the ear of the goat, and they chop their head off and they eat it as a sacrifice to Kali, and they eat it as part of their worship. And while this was happening, another group of goats who were waiting to be chopped up, they were talking to one another. So one goat told the other goat, "You are coming next. Next is your turn. Your head is going to get chopped off." And so in this way, they're having a dialogue. And he said, "Aren't you afraid? What is going to happen to you?" Then he started to laugh. Ha 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 ha. The goat started to laugh. And his other goat friend said, "Why are you laughing?" He says, I'm thinking, we just eat grass every day, and for just eating grass, we get our head chopped off. What will happen to these human beings who are chopping our heads off? What will happen to them?
Hmm.
They will eat us. What will happen to them? So these two goats were having this discussion. And this was just to explain. This is a story from the Puranas you can find. And they're telling us this story that how important it is to uh, be very conscientious of what goes into this body. So it is explained in the wisdom text that the amount of fear that is in this world is highly highly uh, derived from the fact of how mercilessly we kill the other creatures on this planet. Where animals are raised just to be eaten, they live in constant fear and constant abuse and emotional trauma and physical trauma. So when we raise uh, such living beings for our food with such low consciousness, that consciousness that the animal carries enters into our bodies and into our minds through the food. That's why the sages are saying that we have to eat food that has higher consciousness, not consciousness of anger, violence, helplessness, torture. So when we eat higher consciousness, then we will not be subjected to mental health issues in our lives. And then sometimes we complain, why are we too many mental health problems, too many drugs in our bodies? But imagine these animals, their body has been injected with so much drugs just so that they don't get sick and they can get more fat and they can give more meat on the table so you can have more hamburgers. And so what happens, I know this sounds a little too graphic, but what the point that I'm trying to say is that there is so much chemicals being injected into our food. Why should we choose to have more chemicals in our bodies than we need? Why? This is what the sages are asking. Why are we choosing to put more external alien objects and alien entities into this body that this body cannot identify, and it's so complex? So the question the sages ask that we can ask ourselves, we complain when they ask us to get vaccination. We complain, oh, we don't want to get COVID vaccination. But then the same people who complain can also be inhaling vaccinations 3 times a day with big, big slices of steak and beef and burgers and just take those chemicals into this body. So sometimes what happens is because our consciousness is not clear, we're not able to see the connection. So the choices we have to make is how to consciously eat conscious food with your pure consciousness. Because even when we eat, we don't eat with consciousness. We are watching TV, we are on the phone, we're talking, and we are angry when we eat. So there's many, many reasons why we eat. We have had whole discussions on this. And you'll notice when uh, you eat conscious food, then you're almost operating on a platform that is in a consciousness where everything starts to make a lot of sense. Mind and clarity of the emotions. So in yoga, they say that food is God because what yogis eat is pranic food, that is alive, like imagine eating kale, cucumbers, and lettuce, and everything that you eat is raw. it's alive, it's active. You just picked it up from your garden. So that prana is called life. And so God in the form of prana, divine in the form of prana, is what nourishes this body. So what nourishes this body, it is not just the meat, just something that's going into the body, but it is divine in the form of the food that is nourishing the body. So if food is God, and eating should be an activity of connecting with God, then what are we eating? What are we connecting to? What is our what is our what is it that we're having a transaction? What is the content of the transaction? These are questions we can ask ourselves and determine what we need to do and what we should do and shouldn't do. That is an individual choice the that the sages are giving us. I will just tell you this one last story is that I had a neighbor in Atlanta, and they were a beautiful young couple, uh, and they were living next door. And the kids, the moment they were able to eat, they were being fed hamburgers. And then she had mentioned that her son was showing signs of autism. So she said, Veda, you're a yoga teacher. Can you please tell me what I can do for this autism? If there's something I can do to cure this. I mentioned to her, I don't have any cure, but when I asked her about her diet and I said, can you please try not to feed your little son hamburgers for a year and then let's see how it goes. And after 1 year, there was no autism. I'm not by any way saying that the hamburgers are connected to autism, but a young, fragile body and their system trying to cope with life, being put such complex chemicals, external chemicals into the body, it can be a little difficult for little bodies to break down those chemicals. So I recommend everyone to please ask yourself, what consciousness are you eating every day? And you make your own choices and decisions based on that. Because keep in mind, every conscious being has emotions. And when you eat any kind of food, there's going to be an exchange of consciousness and an exchange of emotion